Look, I opened this jar of rotten baby food, and well, a butterfly came out.
Where do
Yeah, I knew
comics?
this one was coming.
Oh, well, let's see. Let's see. So for everyone else, so let me put in some historical context. Welcome to the Comedians in Elevators podcast. I've got my guest Brian T. Shirley. Brian, say hi, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name's Brian T. Shirley. I'm a comedian of 30 years and toured the USA, Canada, the Bahamas, and Japan. And then I've been doing acting for about 12 to 15 years. Still doing stand up and all things entertainment now, stand up acting, hosting trivia, DJ, voiceover work. It's the ones I can think of right now, Keenan.
I like the DJ one. I'm I'm very curious about that. Are you talking about live performances?
Um, yeah, I guess I'm kind of overshooting it a little bit. I
That's the
do
one I
like
went for.
I do like corporate events and
Okay.
birthdays, weddings. I don't have a turntable and doing all that stuff, but I mean,
Digital's good.
I still love doing it. And I got into it because when you host trivia, you play music in between the questions, and then I went and started working with a DJ. And next thing you know, uh, so I do that every once in a while in between the stand up and acting. Still doing
Yeah,
it.
with the list of all the high end entertainment goals that you have, that's why I hit on the DJ because I'm like, well, that's the soft one, so that's the one's probably going to be a little tender and get to some honesty right off the bat. I know I'm
Oh
going
yeah,
kind of dark right off the bat, but you ready to get
that's
started?
fine. Yes, yes.
All right. Listen, to my regular listeners, I know you don't like when at the beginning of these conversations I ask you to subscribe. None of us like it. I don't like saying it. I don't like it being in here. But it's frustrating. You know what else is frustrating? It's also frustrating when I look in the back end of the YouTube channel and I see that 56% of you that watch frequently haven't yet subscribed. And I know this because I see it in the comment section. You say things like, I didn't know I didn't subscribe. And that's actually what fuels the show. Basically, it's like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask all the time, because it enables us to build and build and build, and we're going for the long term here. Hit the subscribe button, and we'll continue to build this show for you. That's my promise. Thank you to all you guys that do subscribe. It means the world to me. So the whole point of the podcast is to compare and contrast the comic versus the comedian. So I define the comic as any person telling funny jokes versus the comedian who's a funny person telling any jokes. So Brian, would you agree that you start as a comic and evolve into a comedian?
Yep, to a degree. I think, yeah, you're probably about 80 to 90% comic when you start off. You don't really have your voice. And some people stay that way, like Seinfeld. Seinfeld's a comic. Robin Williams is a comedian. So right
Interesting.
there is my definition.
Okay. So a lot of people, especially non-comedian or actor performers, would kind of say that the comic is the amateur and the comedian is the professional. Do you see any, does that ring a bell to you in that way?
No, I wouldn't say that. Comics can be every bit as professional as comedians. It's just comics say funny things. Comedians say things in a funny way.
Right. Exactly.
And
Yeah. So that's the traditional definition. I just wanted to reword it so you get the chance to bring that
yeah,
one up.
yeah. No, I mean, we're all in that same ballpark. Because a comic, can go like Seinfeld. It's the easy way to say it is watch Seinfeld, watch the
Mhm.
episode, I mean, the sitcom. You're seeing Jerry Seinfeld as you almost would see him on the street, if you bumped into him. It's almost the same person. Whereas Robin Williams, I mean, pick a movie, Morgan Mindy, Mrs. Doubtfire, you know, just anything he's been in. He's not the
No, I
same guy.
100%. But a lot of people would say that his stand up isn't that funny. Like it does somehow doesn't translate. Do you think that's because he's so much more of a percentage of a comedian that maybe the comic part is left out in the stand up routine?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He well elevated himself above just telling jokes.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. To the point where maybe the stand up, he's not even on stage anymore at that point. I don't know. I'm trying to. It's like the best backhanded compliment you can ever give somebody is that you're so good, your stand up isn't. I don't know if that even
A
makes
lot of
sense.
people thought he was doing improv, but that was every bit choreographed. It had to be for
Yeah.
the lighting and some of the stuff on his specials. But yeah,
Maybe.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think he
Exactly.
transcended just being a comic.
All right. So you ready for the first question, Brian?
Yes, thought that was
All right.
it.
Well, that was the topic, right? So,
Okay,
but the first question is about the role of persona in comedy. So, how much
I
of the
got you.
comedian's voice is a character versus the real self?
Yeah, I think when you start out, it takes a while. I mean, I'm still in a way trying to find my voice, to be honest, but I think the comic has more of a voice than the comedian sometimes because um, the comedian tends to shift a lot. Like, if you look at George Carlin in his later stand up than compared to his earlier stuff, oh my goodness, in his early days, he's doing the hippy dippy weatherman and all these characters, and then later on, he's straight, almost political analysis, in his later years. And so, that his voice changed. So
Mhm.
voices are variable, I believe, Keenan, just if you ask me. So if you're talking comic versus comedian voice wise, maybe the comic hangs on to his voice a little bit better because he's one lane. Let's put it that
In-
way.
Interesting. I have a theory about this is that when you elevate to the next level, you say you start as a comic, go to a comedian, and then you
Yeah.
transcend to something higher, like we're saying or arguing Robin Williams does. Don't you necessarily, at least for this logic, start over at the higher level as a comic and then continue back up to the next level of
Yeah, that
comedian?
could be. But then now I think we're talking style a little bit too,
Yeah.
because if you're going back to comic, just spitting jokes, and that's what I'm thinking that you're saying when you say going back to comic, you're
Yeah.
basically
At
going back
another,
to
at a higher
zero
level though.
at a
Like you're
higher
you're
level.
literally, yeah. So you have like you're bifurcated. You have like people see like two versions of the same thing, which is actually
Right.
evolving even at that moment.
Yeah, it's almost like a step. You're a comedian for a while, then you do that step where you're leveled and you're comic again, and then you step up, and it kind of
Mhm.
progresses like that. That could be kind of what you're talking about, where the comic is the reset to get to the next level. Then you work on the comedian comes in a little bit after that once you're comfortable with that next level of being a comic, whatever
Uh,
level you're at.
would you say that if you're like doing voices or impressions or impersonations of people, maybe a different accent or maybe a different ethnicity or race, is that more comic or comedian?
Oh, that's definitely more comedian.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, do you think Jim Carrey's a comic? No,
I,
he's a
I
comedian
don't
to
know,
me.
no, but yeah, I mean the reason why I'm asking is these words that we're using. A lot of the whole reason I started this podcast is because doing stand up, I was told that there's a difference between a
Beady,
comic
beady,
and
beady,
comedian. I was
beady.
like, what is this? And then I hear it, and
Right. A
I'm
lot
like,
of people don't
oh,
understand that. Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
so now I'm doing this podcast, and people, are, just like me, they're coming up with their own definitions and this and that, and it's all over the place. And I'm like, these words are so all over the place. What
And
what is
it
really
shouldn't
going on
be.
here?
No, I don't think it should be all over the place. Although they do, I mean, they do kind of intersect sometimes and
Mhm.
overlap. And it's hard to put them in boxes. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? To definite boxes. But then again, sometimes you can. Like Jim Carrey. It's like, you know, who basically, if you asked me, took Frank Gershwin's act, the original Riddler from
Uh-huh.
Batman, Frank Gorshin. Watch if
I
you ever get a chance, watch a Frank Gorshin, um, stand up.
okay.
And before he was the Riddler, he did stand up and he did impressions. Watch him, you'll go, wait a minute, that's Jim Carrey, just with older actors. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
You know,
interesting.
he's just doing it with Kirk Douglas, where Jim Carrey would do somebody more relevant to his time period.
Well, now
So
everyone watching is something they can research and
yeah,
understand better,
yeah,
which is great.
right.
So, does
Yeah.
authenticity matter, or is illusion part of the magic?
Yeah, that's another tricky one, man. And I saw that on a couple of your other episodes, and I'm going, wow, he's throwing some curveballs there. Um, I think authenticity has to underlie everything you do. But, I write a certain amount of the stuff I write is not based on reality sometimes. So, because in comics, a lot of comedians and comics do that, where what ifs, stuff that normally wouldn't have, exaggeration, but I think it all has to start from a point of authenticity, because if you can't relate to people or bond with them, they're not going to get what you're talking about. So the authenticity has to be there, but uh, comics probably are a little bit more authentic. I think comedians tend to exaggerate more.
All right, all right. So punching up versus punching down. So where do
Yeah, I knew
comics?
this one was coming.
Oh, well, let's see. Let's see. So for everyone else, so let me put in some historical context. Did a jealous medieval prince become the first comedian by killing the court jester?
Right. Uh, that would be punching down. Or punching up if you no, that's probably punching down. He's going down to the jester. I think I punch up most of the time. Um, Punch down and punch it every which way when there's a heckler, excuse me. Punch down whenever you're in a character. Sometimes your characters punch down and you don't. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Sometimes your characters punch up. You know, to me, you have to stay. And I don't want to say this from an arrogant point, but you have to stay. I always dress a little bit better, or at least as good as my audience, and I try to be a little more intelligent, or at least on their intelligence level. And I'm not saying that from a snotty point of view. I'm just saying you're punching down to me if you're talking down to your audience. If you try to dumb down your material, to me, that's punching down, because you're
Okay.
kind of insulting the intelligence of your audience. So I think punching up, in other words, trying to be, a little more, if that's, your stage persona,
Hmm.
um, I try to punch up, but I think comic versus comedian, comic probably punches up more, because a comedian, like I said, can go into different characters and everything sometimes and use different points of view more than a comic would. So they can punch up and punch down.
It's interesting that you're saying that the character as a comedian can punch down more, has a tendency to punch down more. I'm very curious about that. And do you have a character for DJ?
No, no, not really. I'm the MC. I'm in MC mode when I'm the DJ, because you were
Okay.
talking about it in a recent episode about how the DJ is kind of a lost art form. Well, I'm trying to stay in that mode when I'm. That's why I like hosting trivia,
Hmm.
and still doing the DJ thing. I was asked to MC a show a couple of years ago with Andy Forrester, and I got the pay and everything I wanted. So I mean, some people go, "Oh, that's a step down," especially if I'm getting what I want. No, it's not a step down. It's a great skill, like you said,
Yeah.
and with the lady you just recently had on, uh, you know, and I've been able to I'm starting to do special events now. I just did a thing called Bark in the Park, where I DJ'd and then I hosted a little dog show. They had all these dogs there, and they had a runway with the dogs and all this. So I added some humor, and kept the thing flowing, you
Yeah,
know. And I think
absolutely.
people forget about that being a good MC. Well, I mean, look at all the shows now, AGT, uh, you name it, America's Best Singer or whatever. What are those guys doing?
Hmm.
They're MCing, right?
Yeah,
Ryan
I mean it.
Seacrest.
Yep.
That's money, man. He's an MC,
Yeah, I mean it's it is a lost talent. It's most critical. You have to have it with for a show, otherwise it doesn't work. Maybe especially
right?
you don't need an MC, but if you're doing live events, I don't see how you can't. All right. So, all right, cultural translation of comedy. So, how do jokes that work in one country bomb in another?
Oh yeah. See, I did Canada, and I just couldn't drink enough to bond with those people. You know? That's a joke.
Yeah, yeah.
It's true though. It's just culture. It's all relation to. I mean, when you go in, the one mistake we made in Canada is sometimes was saying, "Yeah, I'm from America." I mean,
They're like,
that
really?
pissed off the audience right there. They're
Right.
like, we're in North America. Uh, so that's sometimes why stuff bombs is because you don't know how to present the material in a way that relates to your audience in a foreign land. So I think you have to either study or be there for a little bit or be uh, change your jokes, be observational. I watch people a lot and write some stuff when you get there, you know, to at least
Mhm.
start it off. I think a lot of stuff bombs, lost in translation and not being able to relate to your audience.
So would you say the comics are more universal while comedians are more culturally specific?
No, I have to argue with that because
Mhm.
usually comedians can think on their feet a little bit better. Comic, sometimes they're married to their material. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? A good comic, though, can change up his jokes and will recognize that. But a comedian can fall back on improv and characterizations. You were talking about visualization too on a
Mhm.
recent episode. Being visual is huge. You take Marceau or somebody like that, international person that comes over here, France, I believe, doesn't say a word. And then there's Victor Borgio, I believe he played piano, and another one didn't say anything, but just made funny noises or whatever and faces, and internationally could transmit humor without a word. Now, do you think that's a comic doing that?
I'm
No,
trying. So
no,
I think
no,
I remember that it was the 80s and 90s mainly, right?
no, no. These guys were
Victor
in the
Borgia.
he was mainly in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and he
Yeah, I was watching
later on in the
reruns.
80s, he was older by that
Oh,
time. He was bigger in the 60s, 50s, and 60s, I believe. But I mean,
okay.
I ask you, would you call that comedian or comic? I would call that a comedian. He's not using one word.
Yeah, then it has to be comedian. I mean, he's literally not telling
Yeah.
any jokes, so it has to be
But he
character
is.
work.
He is telling
Right.
jokes. The jokes are
Okay.
all visual. Yeah. The punchlines are
Oh.
the reactions are things like that. They are jokes, even though they're not audio. They're visual jokes with the music added. I mean, that's just
Ah.
my take on that.
Very. I gonna have to another thing to research. That's is a golden nuggets. Yeah, I love it. So, all right. So, crowd work versus crafted work. So, if comics riff like influencers in the comments section, and
Right.
comedians perform like in reaction videos, where's the sweet spot?
Um, I think the sweet spot is performance. You know, I think it's great that people can come up with stuff, especially real quick in the comments and everything. That's an art form in itself. But for me, I don't know, are you asking personally or just
Well, I mean,
overall?
this tends to be the hardest question for people to understand. So, whatever comes of it is the best part, really. So, if it's personal
For
to
me,
you, then absolutely.
yeah, for me personally, because I'm trying to get more into acting, I'm on that side of the equation rather than just comments and stuff. And I mean, that's how I am totally. If I have a comment, I'm not really making too much fun these days. I'm being observational, although sometimes I do make jokes. But we're talking in that realm that you're talking about,
Mhm.
commenting on stuff rather than the performative short video stuff. I'd
Right.
rather do the short video stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
That's the
this is a
comedian.
new realm. Yeah, this is a new realm.
Yeah.
Like it's an emergent
Oh,
phenomenon.
what's the sweet spot? I see what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
and it's almost a strange question because well, if they're two totally different things, how do you combine the two?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you'd almost have to comment on your own. Well, I guess
Yeah,
performing it and then having a good tag to it
right.
might be a way. You know, that's big too. I mean, if you can say something that stops them, you know, two or three words that makes people stop and then watch. That would be the sweet spot, I would think.
Yeah. Plus, one of the reasons I'm asking this question is the idea that there's some jokes that linger, and then later you get it, right? And so perhaps
Yeah,
that's where the comment section would be appropriate. They're like, "Is this, really?" And you can even initiate it with actually explaining. I know you never want to explain a joke, but with this at this rate, sometimes it makes sense.
sometimes it's funny when you explain the jokes. I do that
Yep.
sometimes. I do. I'll stop and look at somebody and go, "Well, see, the reason that was funny,"
Right.
and everybody else is laughing. So I don't know. I think sometimes explaining stuff is fun if you build it in. Sometimes those are built-in things,
I
or
think it
or
almost has to be, right. You're not you have
yeah.
to do it on you did it on purpose. Otherwise, it's just totally self conscious and it's going to bomb for sure.
Well, I kind of built it into the show. In other
Right.
words, where I don't know which joke I'm going to do it, but I'll probably do it at least once a show, where I'll stop and go, oh, and I'll. Well, one of my jokes at the end, the punchline is me actually explaining the joke,
Right. Right.
and I do it that way every time. It's just the
That's your
way I
closer.
wrote it. If I close, yeah, sometimes I close with it, and I'll
Interesting.
do it, and then I'll sit there for a minute and wait, and some of them are laughing and everything, and I'll go, I'll explain, and it works real well if I've already explained a couple of times,
Hmm.
or at least started to, because sometimes I won't even explain. I'll go, look, that's where, never mind, and then I'll keep going.
Got it. You set them
And
up to do it later.
exactly, once you set it up to bring it in later, and you can do that with, have a rolling thing like that if people watch enough of your video too. I
Hmm.
mean, there's nothing that says you can't do callbacks if
For
they're
explanation, that's a great. Yeah, it sounds like a great way to structure. A joke that at the end has that. It's
right.
sounds perfect to me. All right. Very important question: advertising and self promotion. So, who advertises themselves more? The comic, the comedian, or the magician?
Or the magician. I knew.
You know that place where you're not conscious and you're not sleeping either? That's your power bill to the electric company. Right here. I want us to be here with free energy, where the Wardenclyffe Tower meets the Eiffel Tower. But that's not where we are. We are here, where you've got the utility and you've got residential solar. Between these two, we know which one saves you money. This is where we can go in the meantime. But this is where I want us to be now, and this can be done now. So let me deputize you to represent DOSE, Department of Solar Efficiency, and let's get on the podcast and get the message out today. See you soon.
Oh, I think the comedian. And I've worked with a lot of magicians, but to me, that question um, is variable because it depends on the individual artist. Because a smart comedian, comic, or magician will publicize themselves no matter
Mm-hmm.
what. Just because you're a comic doesn't mean you don't promote yourself. I don't think there's a real big difference. In other words, I think the difference in that lies in the individual artist. You know, are they, some people are lazy, and I was there, and I just finally got off my butt and decided, I gotta. Nobody else is gonna do it. And
Mm-hmm.
people might get aggravated and go, "Man, you post a lot." And it's like, have you ever heard of McDonald's?
Yeah.
I think they still make commercials. I believe. You know, everybody knows who they are, right? But they still have commercials. So a smart person will do it no matter if they're a comic, a magician, a juggler, a comedian, an actor, a DJ, a musician. I mean, you got to do it, especially if you're not a household name.
Yep. All right. Censorship and offense. So, who survives better in a cancel culture environment? The comic, the comedian, the magician, or the mudslinger?
Oh my God. Just whoever has the stamina. And y'all were talking about this too. And y'all didn't get to it, but I believe it was Dave Chappelle that they were trying to cancel at some
Mhm.
point and had nothing to do with him breaking a law or any of that stuff. It was totally material wise. and we saw what happened. He's still standing, and he's very much a comedian. Um, yeah, I mean, do you have the stamina? I mean, well, the other thing is why are you being canceled? You know, is it really something that, you said that was really bad, and
Mhm.
you probably should have been canceled but then again, you can still come back from that. I mean, I don't know, I don't want to say too much about this, but Kevin Spacey is trying to make a comeback, and you talk about getting canceled. I mean,
Right.
that's the height. That's one of the biggest ones I can think of off the top of my head, and he is trying to come back. And he's not a comic or a comedian. Um, those that you mentioned, are you just saying any kind of artist, really? Is that
I mean, yeah, basically. So, yeah, absolutely. But now it seems like I came up with a thought, that perhaps how long the Overton window has been open, right? So, a new window opened with Kevin Spacey, right? And then a whole other
right?
one opened later. And these are new, more recent. And now they're starting to close. And, so I could see how if you can outlast that window, right? So you stay longer. So when it closes, you're okay. And then perhaps some of them you got pushed through that window unfairly. Like a lot of would argue that Kevin Spacey was innocent the whole time, right? And so he just got pushed through the window, if that's what happened, right? And so it would be fair for him to come back. Would you agree?
But that's a great question, Keenan. It's just, gosh, you ask such uh, questions that they're really hard to pin down, and I guess that's why you're doing it. So
Yeah.
you create thought. There's no hell. You could probably do this for about 50 years, just asking the same questions because there's no real. I
Right.
hate I hate to pin down an answer because I don't feel like I have one.
Right.
I think that's another variable because if you're a comic that's thin-skinned or a comedian that's thin-skinned and you just say something either off the cuff or you wrote it and you thought it was funny. I mean, I did a line the other day on another podcast, and now I'm going, oh man, I wonder what people are going to think when they see that. It's
Yeah.
like, and this is a story that happened on the road years ago, and I'm going, oh boy, I'm going to get blowback from that. Well, what do you do? Do you say, sorry, that happened 20 years ago, or, so you're going to get mad at me now for something innocent that happened years ago, or a
Yeah.
word I said back in 1997,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's a remix. Like music now, they're remixing genres, or at least started 20 years ago. And now we're remixing individuals, right? Your history now, then and now, right?
right.
All right. So, Brian, are you ready to
Mudslinger,
enter?
mudslinger,
Mudslinger,
mudslinger.
that's that one's actually the technical answer, right? Because if they started it, they should be able to outlast themselves, right?
If we could come up, if when people come at us, if we
Mhm.
could do a little dirt digging on them, I bet they'd shut up.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. And when I'm sure their secrets are not very deep, right?
I would love to see that in an interview, but go ahead. Sorry.
I don't have mudslingers. Actually, I did have one but I'll let him go. See, I already let him go. All right. So, Brian, are you ready to enter the multiverse?
No, but go ahead.
All right. Well,
I
we're
can't
going
make it in
in.
the single verse.
All right. So, board game Zoomcast, play versus performance. So, if comedy were a board game Zoomcast, are you competing as the colorist, adding tone, mood, and shading, or the Foley artist, building punchlines with soundscapes and timing?
Oh, I think I'm doing the soundscapes with the punch lines and timing. I can't paint worth a shit.
Well, you were describing earlier the visual story, which was audio as well, right? So that would be an example, right? You would say that he was the colorist, even though he's doing the
Yeah.
audio.
Oh, they're coming to get me, by the way. I don't know if you can hear it, but
The police?
yeah, somebody is. Anyway, yeah, building, I love building stuff as far as creatively, and I'm not good at fine tuning. I'm more of a broader builder, I guess you would say. So that's why the second choice rings a little more better with me. The first choice seems to be more, you know, perfection or whatever, detail oriented.
Okay.
And sometimes I'm not the best at details. takes me a while to perfect a joke sometimes.
Well, that's an interesting way of looking at it. So you think the audio, the sound is more fluid, more wave-like, and the colorist would be more particle-like.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be, when you're looking at colors and stuff, you got to know how to blend everything, and it is, I think it's a little more art formy, you know, little art, more artistry, I guess you would say.
More artistry.
And-
I guess like
yeah.
pointillism, one way to look at it.
Okay, there you go.
Well, you're gonna throw out a color style that you're like super technical, but yet somehow blends together. Okay, so does comedy work better when it's painted vividly or when it's orchestrated sonically?
Oh, vividly. Yeah. I mean, what are we? We're artists for the mind. You know what I'm saying? Whenever I'm up there, I'm painting a picture, and if you see what I'm saying in your head, and I paint it, and you can see me tripping over a log or whatever stupid thing I'm talking about that happened. If I can paint that in your head, uh, the closer I get to what I'm thinking to put into your head, the funnier it's going to be to you, or if I make you live through it, or you've been there and I'm painting it, you're going through it, or this happened in your family, or blah blah blah. You know what I'm saying? So I much, yeah, yeah. It's like a scary movie, Keenan.
Mhm.
What's scarier sometimes, when you see the monster or when you don't see the monster? The
Yeah, exactly. It's
best,
yeah,
some of the
beforehand
best, my
usually.
favorite movie, Jaws. One of the best things that happened for Jaws was when the shark didn't work sometimes when they were filming, because he came up with the idea to use the camera point of view as the shark point of view.
Right,
That's how that came about. Brilliant. You don't even see the shark,
right.
but you know it's there. And
Yeah,
you
where they're
the
coming from.
person paints the rest of that themselves that's watching the movie.
That's definitely true. It's been used after that actually many times. So it's a neat
Yes.
trope. All right.
Yeah.
So here on the Comedians and Elevators podcast, we have a tradition where the previous guest asks a question for the next guest. And the previous guest was Dominic Natty. And his question for you, Brian, is tell me where comedy helped you get through a difficult time.
Oh my gosh, there's a lot of those. I guess one of the biggest ones was, I don't want to get too dark and negative, but let's just say I had a death in my life, and went to go to the funeral, which was in a different city, well, not too far from where I live, because I was actually moving to be with this person when they passed away. And the people at the comedy club there were good friends with this person and me. And they actually took me to the funeral. And that night, I was at the club. Where else was I going to be? I was staying up there with some people. And they said, if you want to go up and do 5 minutes, you're more than welcome. And I was like, I don't know. And it hit me. And it just so happened a good friend of mine was working that week at the club too. It was all coincidence. And I went up and did it. And I don't even remember what I did, but I just remember the fact that I could get up there and still try to make people laugh. And the other time was after I had a heart attack, I went and did two shows, my first two shows back from having quadruple bypass, and come off stage, and there's a lady there, and she said, I was in the emergency room when they brought you in. I didn't even know you were going to be here tonight. I said, oh my
Hmm.
goodness. So I mean, those little things, it's almost like God or the universe or somebody telling you, dude, this is what you got to do, you know
Yeah.
and it does. It pulls you through. I mean, it's pulled me through. I'm getting chills thinking about it right now. And
Yeah.
people coming up and going, I'm so glad you did that bit about the heart attack, because my dad just had one. And this is the first time I've been able to laugh about it. I had somebody tell me that too. So that's just three off the top of my head that I can think of.
All right. All right. So, last question legacy. Who gets remembered? So, will the comics Type 5 survive time, or will the comedian's cultural point of view be more timeless?
comedian's point of view.
Okay.
We're still talking about, I mean, y'all already talked about it. I don't know why I should say it again, but I will. We're still talking about Harlan's take on things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're still talking about his 7 dirty words you can't say on TV, I think it is, you know.
Right.
And there's
Yeah.
others that I can think of off the top of my head, but this has been mentioned on this podcast before. But yeah, those are just, I think, good 5 minutes. Yeah, sure, it's funny and da da da, but how far does that get here? Because that's where everything's going to stay. The comics, the comedians that touch you here, ones that touch you here, yeah, cool. Go see them. But boy, the ones that can get you here, ah, yeah, yeah, that's the stuff.
So it sounds like either one. It doesn't matter, comic or comedian.
Right.
All right. So where,
Whoever can
Brian,
grab you here.
right. Where can everybody find you online, Brian?
Facebook,
Okay.
TikTok, Instagram. Please check out my IMDb page. I'm trying to build up my acting. But you can always try to check in and see what shows might be doing locally to you. Nothing else, just Google Brian T. Shirley. Make sure you put the T in or you'll get a race car driver. I don't drive like.
But well, I'll leave that one. Awesome. Well, Brian, thank you so much for being my guest. And for everyone, please like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one. If you're interested in too much information like in the network state or Mantipus the chicken shit, check out this video. Or is it this one right here? Well, either way. Lizard